Vistara Flight 944 is on final approach to runway 27 at Lucknow Airport. The aircraft has been in the air 2 hours longer than planned, and fuel reserves are critically low after several failed landing attempts, and with the weather worsening, they must land as quickly as possible. But just when it seems like the situation couldn't get any worse, the crew receives alarming news. The runway visual range has dropped below minimum, forcing them to abort. The approach, night is falling, and fuel is running out. They need to land. Immediately, will the pilots manage to get the aircraft on the ground safely? Let's find out. This is the story of Vistara Flight, Music, 944. It's the afternoon of July 15, 2019, and Vistara Flight 944 is preparing for its journey from Mumbai to Delhi, two of the busiest airports in India, handling millions of passengers each year. This flight is one of many daily services connecting the two cities, serving both business travelers and tourists. The flight takes about 2 hours and is scheduled to arrive in Delhi at 5:00 p.m. Local time. The aircraft for this journey is an Airbus A320neo, a narrow-body plane known for its fuel efficiency. Popular for domestic and medium-range flights, it offers comfort and reliability. Manufactured in 2018, this aircraft has accumulated 5,077 flight hours, making it a recent addition to Vista's fleet. Vistara quickly gained recognition after launching in 2015 a partnership between Tata Sons and Singapore Airlines. The airline grew fast and became one of the leading players in India's domestic market, ranking just behind Indigo and Air India as the first of 155 passengers begin boarding the aircraft. 500 kilo of fuel is loaded. This fuel load is based on the calculations outlined in the operational flight plan, ensuring enough fuel for the journey from Mumbai to Delhi and reserves for any unexpected diversions. Meanwhile, the pilots are busy with pre-flight preparations. They are a relatively young crew. The 30-year-old captain has logged over 500 flight hours, while his 28-year-old first officer has 9,600 in total before the flight. The pilots received important flight information, including a transit briefing sheet. This document contains details about the weather and alternate airports, in case they need to land elsewhere. The sheet listed Ahmedabad as the first alternate airport and Lucknow as the second, but when the pilots check their operational flight plan, they notice something doesn't match the off-lists. Lucknow as the first alternate and Jaipur as the second. The transit briefing sheet and the OFP should be the same, but they aren't, which could cause confusion later in the flight. Knowing which airports are available during a diversion or emergency is essential for quick decision-making. And as we'll see, this seemingly small mistake plays a significant role in what happens next with Flight 944 at 2:57. Local time. The aircraft is cleared for pushback. It is a warm afternoon with a slight haze in the sky, but overall the weather is ideal for flying. The engines power up, and the aircraft taxis toward runway 27. The flight crew conducts final checks confirming that all systems function correctly and everything is set for departure. The pay partner of today's Flight 944 reaches the runway threshold upon receiving takeoff clearance. The aircraft accelerates and lifts off smoothly. Passengers settle in for what is expected to be an uneventful journey. The climb to 35,000 ft is smooth, and once at cruising altitude, the flight continues without any issues. The crew communicates regularly with air traffic control, monitoring the flight's progress along the planned route. What they fail to consider, however, is the importance of monitoring weather conditions at en route airports. This oversight becomes critical later, as real-time weather updates from these nearby airports are essential for making quick decisions in case of a diversion. As Flight 944 nears Delhi, the crew receives an alarming update. Severe thunderstorms are forming over the airport, bringing strong winds, heavy rain, and visibility dropping to just 1,000 su. These conditions pose a serious challenge to landing operations as they continue their approach. Air traffic control delivers more bad news. Landing is currently impossible due to worsening weather conditions. Several aircraft have already executed go-arounds, and with no immediate improvement expected, the crew is instructed to enter a holding pattern, a standard procedure. When a landing clearance is delayed, the holding pattern involves flying in a circular path designed to keep the aircraft within a specific specific area while waiting for clearance to land. During this time, the crew remains focused, closely monitoring the weather conditions and assessing their available diversion options. While holding, the weather continues to deteriorate. Visibility remains low and turbulence intensifies. Despite continuous updates from ATC, no landing clearance is granted. The extended time spent in the holding pattern has consumed much of their remaining fuel, making Ahmedabad no longer a viable diversion airport. The crew's decision to hold has inadvertently closed off one of their safer alternatives. At this point, the crew is acutely aware of the situation's urgency. The combination of deteriorating weather, decreasing fuel reserves, and uncertainty about landing in Delhi means that every minute counts. The decision to continue holding and await clearance for landing or proceed with the diversion weighs heavily on the crew, with no immediate clearance in sight. They decide that if landing in Delhi remains unfeasible, they will divert to Lucknow despite the worsening weather. Conditions en route Jaipur would have been the safer choice due to its proximity and favorable conditions. However, Vistara has no operational presence there, which would result in logistical complications, including delayed ground handling and passenger assistance. Although the captain has the final authority on such decisions, company policy likely influenced the crew's choice to divert to Lucknow. Even though Jaipur seemed the safer option, they continue holding, hoping for a clearance, but after circling for about 20 minutes and with only 8 tons of fuel remaining, the crew informs air traffic control that they can hold for no more than 10 more minutes before diverting. However, just as the situation nears a critical point, air traffic control delivers good news at 4:57 p.m. local time. They tell the crew they're 40 nautical miles from touchdown and start giving radar vectors for an ILS approach to runway 29. This raises the crew's hopes, presenting a chance to land at Delhi despite the challenging weather with renewed focus. The crew prepares for the approach, their only chance to land at Delhi. However, worsening conditions cast doubt on their success. As the aircraft aligns with runway 29, shifting winds and deteriorating weather make it difficult to maintain a stable approach. Crosswinds and turbulence challenge the pilots, forcing them to fight for control. They lower the landing gear and set the flaps, but turbulence intensifies, sending sudden jolts through the cabin as tension rises. Passengers grip their seats. Despite the challenging conditions, a landing still seems possible, but at approximately 250 ft on final approach, the winds shift, suddenly creating a dangerous tailwind exceeding 15 knots with the wet runway and the risk of exceeding aircraft limitations. The crew decides to execute a misapproach, climbing away from the runway. The pilots quickly review the latest weather reports for Lucknow and prepare for the diversion with fuel. Quickly depleting, every minute is critical inside the cabin. Panic spreads rapidly. Passengers already on edge are left in uncertainty. Neither the captain nor the crew provides any information about the situation, leaving them confused and frightened. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the crew faces a new challenge: severe weather has blocked the route to Lucknow to avoid the worst of the storm and restricted airspace near Agra. They are forced to take a longer route, veering southward. This unexpected detour further strains their fuel reserves, intensifying the pressure as time passes. Radar Vistara 944. Any interest for Jur is Waken negative. Sir L now is our alternate Vistara 944. Despite worsening conditions, the crew remains committed to diverting to Lucknow, even as ATC suggests Jaipur as a safer alternative. The operational flight plan indicates they will land with only 1 ton of fuel, leaving no room for further complications. Had the crew reassessed their options, they might have realized that Jaipur, being closer and experiencing better weather, was the more practical choice. However, with the diversion already in motion, they press on toward Luck. Now the flight proceeds without major issues until descent, when the crew encounters heavy rain and severe turbulence as they line up with runway. 27 approach control reports a runway visual range of just 475 m due to thunderstorms and rain. The aircraft is third in the arrival sequence, aware of their critical fuel status. The flight crew informs ATC that further delay is not an option as heat and ice. Extended waiting could escalate into an emergency. Then the situation worsens the runway. Visual range drops to just 275 m, and the aircraft ahead discontinues its approach due to the deteriorating conditions with visibility dangerously low. The captain has no choice but to abandon the approach. The crisis deepens. Eye conditions have worsened. Night is falling and fuel. Reserves are critically low. A landing must happen soon. Missa 944. We're at minimum fuel. Now we need priority for landing. Otherwise, we will be touching our minimum reserve fuel heading turning now 2020. Due to weather Vistara 944 at 612, the crew declares a minimum fuel warning as the estimated fuel on board drops to just 1 tons. Ideally, according to company procedures, this declaration should have been made earlier at the start of their diversion to Luck. Now, given that an Airbus A320neo typically burns between 2.2 and 2.5 tons of fuel per hour, this leaves roughly 20 to 30 minutes of flight time under standard conditions. After abandoning the approach, the crew continues circling at a low altitude, hoping for an improvement in weather conditions. But despite their hopes, the storm shows no signs of relenting. Minutes later, the situation takes a dire turn. The estimated fuel onboard indicator turns amber, signaling a critical fuel warning. Realizing the gravity of their challenge, the crew immediately declares a Mayday fuel. Vistara 944. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Fuel, we need an airport to land immediately. Vistara 944. The series of setbacks, the go-around in Delhi, the detour to avoid severe weather, and the missed approach at Lucknow has left them with dangerously low fuel. The situation has now reached a critical point. Tension mounts in the cockpit as the crew scrambles for options with limited fuel and worsening weather. They initially considered diverting to KPUR, but poor conditions along the route force them to change course toward Pryor instead. But the captain expresses a serious concern. They might not have enough fuel to reach the airport. The situation, already desperate, becomes even more daunting. The aircraft's flight management system lacks navigation data for both Canner and Priage, forcing the crew to rely on basic navigation, making matters worse. They don't have instrument landing charts for either airport, as Vistara doesn't typically operate there. Navigating in unfamiliar conditions with minimal resources adds another layer of pressure, but just as the crisis deepens, hope emerges while en route to Prague. Air traffic control reports that visibility at Lucknow has improved to 600 m. Though still marginal, it meets the aircraft's minimum landing requirements. The captain hesitates, fearing the weather might deteriorate again. 944. Radar visibility has improved. Row visibility is 800 to 1000 m. Now, and if you wish, you may turn back for LNO moments later. Air traffic control provides another update. Visibility has now improved further to between 800 and 1,000 m. This new information changes everything with fuel running dangerously low. The crew commits to returning to Luck. Now the captain, focused and resolute, prepares for an ILS approach to runway 27. Strong winds and poor visibility continue to pose challenges, but there's no turning back. Every second counts as the crew pushes forward, knowing this is their final chance to land. The approach is rough. The aircraft shudders in the turbulent wind as rain pounds against the fuselage in the cockpit. Tension peaks as the crew fights to maintain control. The plane descends rapidly, passengers gripping their armrests, bracing for imp. Then, just in time, the runway emerges from the mist. Seconds later, at 6:48, the aircraft finally touches down, bringing relief to the crew and passengers. But when the pilots check the fuel readout on their displays, reality sets in. they have just 348 cars of fuel, left to put 348 cars of fuel into perspective. This equates to roughly 5 to 10 minutes of flight. Time under normal conditions, the crew was mere minutes away from a worst-case scenario running out of fuel and attempting an emergency landing in the dark in severe weather. Had they headed for PRI Garage, investigators later revealed that they wouldn't have made it with the fuel remaining. While the flight crew adhered to company policies, their decision-making revealed significant lapses in critical thinking and situational awareness. They remained fixated on diverting to Lucknow despite worsening weather conditions, the availability of alternative options like Jaipur, and a rapidly dwindling fuel supply. Despite the severity of the incident, regulators chose not to suspend the pilots' licenses. However, their actions raised serious concerns regarding pilot judgment, adherence to fuel safety margins, and decision-making under pressure.